All right, good morning, my friends. It's Tuesday and a little cool here still. Got a party tonight, kind of an outdoor one, so I'm hoping that the weather gets a little warmer. But looking forward to that, hanging out with some friends who are journeying, we're journeying with, and just personal development and personal growth, and just seeing ourselves plod along and become better humans, if you will. So that's where we are, and man, I'm looking forward to this morning though, and teaching through the scriptures that we're looking at today, and it's powerful truth. If you're just now joining us, Paul is writing his last letter to Timothy, who's a young protege pastor, mid 30s, but Paul's in his mid 60s, and Paul's in prison, knowing that he's got to really stir up and encourage this pastor who's a little fearful, a little timid, a little unsure of what's going on, solid Christ follower, just intimidated by the false teachers. And Paul is deeply concerned about what will happen to the church if this false teaching begins to kind of work its way into the church. And so we see the effects of that. And so we've been seeing what he's looking at as we wander through this truth. And so we are in chapter 3. And yesterday we just really laid the foundation for everything that he's getting ready to say. Let me read the text, really verse 1 through 5, and we'll then kind of jump into it. He says, "But mark this," all right? Write this down, Timothy. Make a note of this. Etch it in your brain. Mark this. There will be terrible times in the last days. People will be lovers of themselves, lovers of money, boastful, proud, abusive, disobedient to their parents, ungrateful, unholy, without love, unforgiving, slanderous, without self-control, brutal, not lovers of good, treacherous, rash, conceited, lovers of pleasure rather than lovers of good, having a form of godliness but denying its power. Have nothing to do with such people. Now, that's a brutal statement that he makes here. This is some of the most devastating truth that you and I will ever encounter. And I've kind of titled this "The Slippery Slope of Self-Love." We really kind of go down the rabbit hole is what we're doing of self-love to see where it ends up. And Paul believes this is the most destructive thing that can happen. And so because of the nature of what he says at the end, have nothing to do with these people, we assume these are leaders that he's talking about and the effects of that and what happens to those people. He's identifying and exposing what false teachers look like. Those who don't love God demonstrate these things, but really it should serve as a warning to us too, just to see that we remove ourselves as far as we can from even the attitudes of those in our own life. And so he's saying here, Timothy, in light of the fact that you are striving to be useful to the kingdom, right, a vessel of honor, and what that looks like, and we talked about that a couple of times last week, he's saying now to us that, now, I want you to understand, Timothy, that's who you are being called to be. There is an enemy. There is darkness. There is a fight. We are in a fight. And he says, mark this, there will be terrible times in the last days. Terrible. That word there could really be used as to say dangerous or violent. Violent's a great word. Violent times will come in the last days. Violence in the sense of warfare, of men struggling with each other. Seasons will be a constant reality in the days between the two comings of Jesus. This is what he's saying. Last days is that from when Christ was ascended until Christ comes again. Those are the last days. So you and I are living in the last days. Timothy and Paul were living in the last days. Those who live up until the coming of the Lord will be living in the last days. And he says, I want you to understand something. These are going to be terrible seasons, constant. It'll be a constant reality in our life. This season of violent waves that will come, and it almost appears as though each one will get worse than the one before it. And so we talked about some of those waves that we've seen even in our own life, or my life rather. I'm older than most of you. Throughout that season, Humans always tend towards self-love. That is who we are. We're born, I say, dirty, rotten, stinking little sinners. We're full of sin when we're born, right? No one has to teach us as kids how to lie or how to take what's not ours or how to be mean. No one teaches those because they're inherent within us. It's a part of the curse, right? There's depravity even in the smallest of us, and so we know that to be true. And so there is this self-love. We looked at that and where it came from. It came in the garden when man it chose to sin. Their focus moved away from their mate. Therefore, because before the fall, they were not even aware of their own nakedness in that sense. They were just not even concerned about themselves, concerned about their mate. Then when sin entered into the picture and the darkness began to creep in, their focus turned to themselves. We saw that. Now, once you decide to focus on that evil, that self-love, an evil portal is opened up. And this is what he's saying. So he starts with people will be lovers of themselves. I believe that to be like the portal. Once you make the decision to not love God, to choose to reject God, or you choose to love self, a portal's opened up, and it's this slippery slope. It's a rabbit hole that leads to all sorts of destruction. And this is what we're going to look at today. And we're going to do a speed reading really through these. But in Christ, though, you and me are called to do several things, right? Self-love is not to be a part of any of our lives, not ours. Now, the sad statement is the church has embraced it, brought it in, even put speakers and teachers up before the congregations that preach a self-love kind of a thing. And I know this is going against some of our mindset. We think of self-love, we're thinking, wait a minute, but I mean, I should have a good, healthy self-esteem. Well, yeah, in some sense, there's that reality. Our healthy self-esteem, though, is not found in us. It's found in Christ. That's where everything that I derive myself comes from. And so I'm just going to remind us of a couple of passages of Scripture to put it in context before we speed dial our way through this section. Jesus says this, if anyone wishes to come after me, let him what? Deny himself. That doesn't sound like self-love, right? That sounds like I made a priority. I'm going to love Jesus. Deny himself, take up his cross. That is, be willing to lay your whole life down. It's not about you any longer, right? And follow him. Be as Jesus was. Well, how was that? Well, Paul told the Philippian church, have this attitude in yourself, which was also in Christ Jesus, who although he existed in the form of God, did not regard the whole thing that he was God as something to hold on to and go, wait a minute, but I'm God. Instead, he emptied himself, taking the form of a servant. He humbled himself. And so what did Jesus do? Well, if we're to follow him, what does that look like? Well, we empty ourselves. We humble ourselves. We follow him. John said that as well. John the Baptist, he said, he must increase. I must decrease. As we march through this Christian life, there is a lessening of ourselves and there is more of Christ that should be emanating from us. It's why Paul told the Ephesian church, I urge you, therefore, by the mercies of God, that you present yourselves a living sacrifice to God, holy and acceptable, that you would walk worthy of this calling, that you would be completely humble. Now, humble means, it doesn't mean thinking less of yourself. It's really not thinking of yourself at all. That's what it means. It's not saying that you're in some sense more skilled or better or more noble or more holy. It's simply that we don't regard ourselves as important. We regard you. We don't even consider ourselves. We just serve. Be completely humble. Be completely gentle. This is what Paul is telling the Ephesian church. That you would be patient. That is, that you would endure obstacles and difficulties from outside of you. You're unmoved by that. You just trust in God. And forbearing, that is, you're unmoved by what people do to you. You're just trusting God. And then that you would keep the unity of the faith. Now, that's in contrast to what we're looking at here. This is what God has called us to. Now, what we're looking at here is that slippery slope. When you have pastors who have self-love, when you have teachers that are self-love, when you have fellow warriors that you think you're walking through life with that have self-love, you're in very dangerous territory. And Paul is letting him know that. And so what we're going to do now is just kind of look at these. They're really somewhat self-explanatory, and I just want to kind of ramble these off. But these are the results of you and me choosing to be selfish slobs, right? And so he's saying the effect of this is what false teachers look like. They can mask it however they want, but at the end of the day, the core of them looks like this. Don't let this be said of you or me, right? And so here's what he says. There will be terrible days. People will be lovers of themselves, lovers of money, right? Money lovers. Silver, actually, agiras. It means silver, loving silver. It goes with that. If you're going to gratify yourself, you've got to have the wherewithal to satisfy all of your cravings from a financial perspective. And so you're just going to love money because money lets you dress better. Money lets you play harder. Money lets you have a better appearance. Money lets you feel like you're superior to others. Once you've put your value in money, you're a lost cause. And this is what he's saying. Not to be lovers of money. It doesn't mean we're not good stewards of it. I'm not going to keep reminding us of all of these things. I'm just going to let you know what happens when we choose self-love. Then you become lovers of money. You become boastful. That's the term there is a braggart, right? An imposter. You're boasting. You're bragging about things. You're putting your best foot forward. That's really what that means. You're boasting. And so what you're doing is you're playing the imposter. You're making yourself look better than you really are. And he says this is what happens because you want to create this persona that you're better than everybody else. So there's this boasting. You're always going to talk about your successes. You're always going to talk about your wins. It's always got to be about you. Someone tells you a story, you have to up that story. You have to one-up them. You no longer are listening to conversations anymore. You're simply waiting for that door so you can talk about how much better you are than everybody else, and you can keep bloviating about how great you are. This is what happens when you choose to love self. So you love money. You're boastful, proud. It's a sister to boastfulness. It's an arrogance. You actually believe you're boasting. So you think you are a cut above everybody else. And so you walk in the room and go, I'm better than these people. And this is what happens. There's this, you insulate yourself by buying into your boasting. You look at your stuff, and then you begin to gravitate toward people who you really can dominate over. And so there's this proud arrogance. You see yourself as a cut above. And then you become abusive. You become evil speaking and slander because when you walk in that room thinking you're a cut above and you find someone that really is a cut above you from your perspective, what do? I'm going to drag them down. I'm going to whisper in the corner. I'm going to slander them. I'm going to say, well, let me tell you about them. Let me tell you all the dirty deeds they do. And this slander, and it begins to, you're trying to bring everybody down because you're in love with yourself. And so you've got to stay at the top. So everything else has to be pushed down. There's no room. You're king of the heap, so to speak. This is what he speaks of. So you're abusive, and then you're just disobedient to your parents. There's this dishonoring thing. You're not persuaded to give your parents any leverage or any respect. That just shows you're not even aware of who you came from. You're not even aware of your lineage. You don't even want to see your place in the family. You just want to get out of that family because you're afraid it may hold you back. So you're not going to let your parents leverage you in any way. You're not even going to obey them. You're not even listening to them. It's a terrible slope that goes down. When you get to that place, you begin to be ungrateful, right? I mean, you're not even grateful for your parents. If you can't be grateful for your parents, you can't be grateful for anybody. They're the ones who brought you into this world. They're the ones who changed your diapers. They're the ones that made sure you had food on the table. These are the things that happens when you choose to love self. It triggers all of these domino effects so that you become ungrateful. That literally is a term that means without grace, right? You're graceless. You have no grace toward others, therefore you're not thankful. You're not even conceding any grace toward others. You just see people as obstacles, and so there's no thankfulness. You deserve it. They gave you a gift. Well, how come it wasn't better, right? You're not giving grace to anybody. And so this is what it looks like. So you're ungrateful in that sense. And then you're unholy. There's no common. Once you hit that threshold, there's no common decency in you at all. You are without restraint. You have no filter on your mouth. You're going to spit nothing but gutter garbage and everything else that coming out of your mouth. It's unholy. You care nothing about the standards of God. Because what is holiness at the end of the day? It's loving God with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and loving our neighbors ourselves. To be unholy is to be unloving. Unloving to God, unloving to others. And so there's just no decency. You're without restraint. And then he says that you're without love. And that comes with being unholy. There's no love. You're callous and you're abusive to people. Sure, you may couch that you love if it's the appropriate thing in the context of the people that you're hanging out with. But you show no affection. You're callous. You're abusive to people. This is the flavor of what that term means. And so you're unloving. You're without love. You're unforgiving. There's no truce in you, right? That's what that means. Literally, it means when unforgiving is no truce. You're not willing to meet in the middle. You're not willing to go, hey man, I'm sorry too. You're just brutal. You're unable to be pleased. When this is that slippery slope. Nobody can please you anymore. You're unforgiving. You're brutal. Somebody's a minute late. You're all over them. Somebody didn't say something that you thought they should say. You're all over them. It's a brutal concept of what happens. Are you feeling kind of right now? But this is what it looks like. And the dangerous thing is we can see a lot of that even in us who are Christ followers, can't we? So he says you're unforgiving. Then you're slanderous. That literally is diabolos. You're the devil. That's what he's saying. Now, we have taken that thing, devil, because he is an accuser, and that's what he does day and night. That's how come diabolos drifts into slander. But at the end of the day, you're just a devil. You're a false accuser. You're just slandering everybody. You just want to poison the whole well so that you look like you're the cream of the crop, so to speak. And then you're without self-control. You've become now full force into a slave of passion. You are an addict and everybody sees it, but you're oblivious to it. Mentally, you're without self-control, so you let your mind wander. I mean, you talk about why the world seems crazy. It's because because this loving of self will tend toward that. Your mental capacity is gone. So you can no longer see gender. You can no longer see right or wrong. You can no longer see unity. You're just full. Your passions are going crazy. Verbally, you don't even know how to throttle back. And social media has given us an opportunity to do that because we don't have to look people in the eye. We can just be lack of self-control, just say whatever we feel. There's no filter on us at all. Physically, we just do whatever we want. We indulge ourselves in every pleasure that there is. That's what it means to be without self-control. Well, then he comes on, he says this, you're brutal. That's a term, literally, it's savage. There's just no mercy in you. You're never going to let up, are you? You're just full into this. And anybody in your way, you're going to be a savage to them. And then it says they're not even a lover of good. At this point, goodness is nothing that's in your wheelhouse. You don't even care about it. You're a hater of good. You're opposed to everything God, because if you choose to love yourself, you want to be God. So at the end of the day, and you've scooted everybody out of your way, there's one that stands in your path, and it's God. And so therefore you go, I'm opposed to him too. Whatever he says to do, I'm doing the opposite. Man, are you getting the flavor of this? And so he says they're not lovers of good. And then he says they're treacherous. That is, you're a betrayer. You're a traitor. That's what you are. You have you can't join yourself to anybody. At the end of the day, you'll betray anybody that gets in your way. That's what happens when you choose this road of self-love. Then you're rash. That is, that you're just impulsive. And again, these all kind of run together. Paul's just being very descriptive in the context. And you're conceited. You have no reason to think who you are because of everything else going on in your world. You're the dirtiest of all people on the planet. You're the one that everybody should hate. Yet you puff yourself up to think you're the one everybody should love, so that you're conceited in that. And then you're just a lover of pleasure rather than a lover of God. You're just unrestrained desires at this point. This is what it looks like when you choose the slippery slope of self-love. That's where it comes to. Isn't That's just disgusting, isn't it? When you read that as a whole, you go, who in the right mind would want that? You may not have wanted it. It's the result that happens when you choose to say, I'm more valuable than everybody else. In fact, I give God a good running for the title of God. This is what happens when you love yourself. Now, we're going to end with this. Tomorrow, we're going to pick this up in verse 5. Having a form of godliness, but denying its power. And he says, have nothing to do with these people. All right, man, wow. That was a stench hole we went down, wasn't it? Lord bless you guys. It's going to get better. We're still going to see the brutality of these people, but there's still the optimism that you and I are on the winning team. So, man, Lord bless you guys. Have a good day, and I will see you in the morning if the Lord wills.